Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second of our fireside chats, which are part of the WhatsApp channel performance campaign to bring about measurable improvement in the elimination of single-use plastics amongst our team members, our mystery shoppers, field workers, and auditors across channel performance. In today's episode, we are pleased to be joined by members of Ipsos, Craig Bradley, our Global CEO Channel Performance, who you'll remember from our last episode, and Colin Strong, who is the Global Lead for Behavioral Science at Ipsos MORI. So hello to you both, and thank you for taking time to chat today. A quick round of introductions. My name is Anis Kanji. I'm a Senior Account Manager with Channel Performance based in Toronto, Canada. I'll pass over to Marguerite for a quick introduction on herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Marguerite Darcy. I sit in Geneva within the Mystery Shopping Channel Performance, and I'm a research executive. And Colin, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, I lead behavioral science at Ipsos MORI, and I work across a whole wide range of challenges in the private and the public sector across many different geographies. And the whole issue of sustainability has really taken to the fore, as we all know, in the last, certainly in the last year, 18 months. And so an increasing amount of our focus and work is around that.
And I'm Craig Bradley. As Anis said, I lead the channel performance service line, and the WhatsApp channel performance campaign came about over a year ago, actually, when my daughter, who's now 22, challenged me on the state of the planet and the oceans and kind of blamed my generation for it and said that it's really our job to clean it up. So in thinking about the influence we have around the world, as Anis mentioned, with field workers and the team members that we have and Ipsos as a company, it's a lot of people, and if we can impact those people, get them focused on reducing single-use plastics, then we felt we could make an impact. So our goal is to go out to those hundreds of thousands of people we impact around the world to do just that.
That's great. Thanks, Craig. Colin, maybe we'll start with you. For those who haven't heard the term behavioral science, can you give us a quick introduction as to what that is and what that means?
Fundamentally, it is referencing psychology. It is often referencing cognitive psychology in the work of people like Daniel Kahneman and Dan Ariely and the such like. But I think it's getting to be referencing a broader base, and it is moving to increasingly include social psychology, for example, in the way in which it is thought about and practiced. What does that mean in reality? Well, what it means is that we are working with teams in order to help understand the mechanisms that are shaping behaviour, and using all of that really good theory in order to help us to do that and throw new lights on what's going on. But also, and really importantly, we make a linkage from that understanding through to, well, what do you do about it? How do you actually move from that kind of decoding or diagnosis of the behaviour to designing interventions to change that behaviour? So it's very much sort of having behaviour front and center, and then working out, well, how do we understand it, and then how do we intervene and facilitate the shaping of it?
Well, that's great. That's a very good, really good explanation of that. I think it gives a good background for everyone. I guess then, in terms of sustainability, you mentioned the phrase mechanisms that shape behavior, and perhaps Craig, I'll ask you, and maybe you've had conversations with your daughter and family about this, but why do people perhaps tend to say one thing but perhaps do another?
I'm sure at the end of my answer, Colin will explain why. I can only explain what, maybe because, and from an example, for me this year, I had a significant birthday, and it required sort of a party of friends and family, and I had a taco bar that an outside firm came in and did and set up, and you know, with my drive for reducing single-use plastics, I made sure that everything was compostable. So every piece of cutlery or, you know, silverware, everything else, plates, cups, everything was all to be composted. So I was very proud of myself. And the party went on. What I failed to do was actually set up or have bins set up to put compost and other, so everything went into trash bags. So then at the end of the night, somebody took it away. So the next day when I came back to kind of do the final cleanup, there's no compost, there's no recycling, there's just trash bags that have gone somewhere that I don't even know. So I think it was disappointing for me because I planned ahead. I found a firm that actually took care of this, or, you know, I thought they did. But for me, it was the last mile, the last little piece of effort that I didn't put in. And then by the time it was gone, it was gone. And so I think for me, what I've noticed in my own self and with other people, our intentions often aren't followed through with those final little actions that make it count. And in this case, you know, I destroyed quite a bit of the earth somewhere, somehow, because all those compostable plastics went out into the trash and never to be seen again. So Colin, explain to me, why did I do that? And don't say it was alcohol, because it wasn't.
No, I'm sure that had nothing to do with it. Well, I think that's a really good little case study, isn't it? Because and that illustrates so much of how things are operating at a macro level, you know, that particular micro example, because all the polling that we see, so much of the polling indicates that people want to do the right thing, that people are minded to engage in sustainable activities, and there's a whole breadth and depth of what those things are. And but as we know, and I think as researchers we all well know this, is that best intentions don't always translate into behaviour, and that's for a whole bunch of reasons. And it may be that, exactly to take your example, that you are motivated to do it, you reckon you'd figured out how to do it, but if the environmental sort of support isn't there to deliver on it, you ain't going to do it. It's not going to happen. But there's plenty of other things which we might be able to pick up on as well. You know, it might be that if you're the only person in the neighborhood doing this stuff, then maybe you're going to feel a bit awkward about putting out your stuff to recycling. You're going to feel a bit stupid, or maybe you see yourself, you think, oh, I'd like to do it, but really I'm not the eco warrior type. You know, I'm a more sort of mainstream kind of person. You know, there's a long list of reasons why they get in the way of us actually enacting these behaviors. And so what we really need to do is to sort of unpick, well, what's going on. And there's a whole, so this is where the science comes in to say, well, look, how do we start identifying what all those different mechanisms might be that are getting in the way, and then once we've identified them, how do we actually address them? So I think there's as I say, a bunch of good reasons why we don't always deliver on those intentions.
Yeah, I guess that having that intention in the first place is a good step, and then following through and carrying it forward would be the next good steps. But I guess you know, how do we get to that? How do we get there? How do we understand what those responses are, and, you know, try to close that gap?
Sure.
A little bit better.
Yeah, and this is where it's useful to have a consistent and holistic way of getting to that, because, you know, we can all make stabs at this. You know, we can all kind of there's a multitude of reasons, right? And you know, there's lots of different ways of thinking about those reasons and talking about those reasons. But what we need is a way to bring all that together in this kind of coherent way that we can all get our heads around. So this is where behaviour change frameworks are useful. And what behaviour change frameworks do is that they've kind of done all the work for you. They operate as your own sort of quasi behavioural scientists, on a page, as it were. So it kind of sets out, look, if you want something to change, then all these different mechanisms you need to have a tick beside rather than a cross or a question mark. So an example of these behavioural change mechanisms, the leading one that's often used is something called COM-B. So it sort of sets out the way in which we need to make sure that the capabilities are in place. The C, opportunities, environmental support, as in Craig's example, that wasn't there. and the motivation, so in Craig's case, that was there. Now that we've taken that and we developed it and extended it, and ours is called MAPS: motivation, ability, processing, physical environment, and social and cultural. And we've been using these frameworks for a number of years, so we've kind of worked out what works and what doesn't work so well, and we use that a lot in our sustainability practice.
In that context, how do we educate people? I guess you're going to move to that. How do we educate people to apply that structure in their kind of, it's a mental thing clearly, or maybe it is something you write down, to make sure that when you have this intention, you kind of follow through, whether it's weekly recycling or reducing the use of plastic or whatever? So yeah, how do we, so I suppose what we're doing as people working in this space is then using that to say, look, where are the blockages? And then how do we unblock them? How can we make that happen? So in your case, it would really be that, actually, I'm not sure what else you could have done, because your understanding of that was that you were going to get that stuff composted, or maybe you hadn't necessarily thought in advance about, I need to have a compost bin, what's happening, and so on. But, there's something there that sort of to help us to think it through. And I think that's part of what's going on here, is that it's not like we're standing at a shelf in a supermarket thinking, well, shall I buy this brand or that brand? And there's a, do I like sort of this flavor or that flavor? It's these decisions and these behaviors are quite complicated. And knowing how to do the right thing takes a bit of work. So I do think we need to be a little sympathetic to your plight here, Craig. It's just like actually they're kind of thinking it all through, and you had a lot of other things on your mind. Who's going to come, who's not going to come. How do is everyone going to have a good time? Have I got enough booze in? And so on, and and have I is it going to be okay? There's a lot to be thinking about, a lot of other things, and so therefore sustainability, we have to recognise, isn't always necessarily top of people's minds, because understandably there's a whole load of other things going on. So perhaps what we need to do is just to make sure that we have mechanisms in place that can support people, that we can say, actually, we need to find a way to insert ourselves and to help people to stop their usual sort of ways of thinking about things, and then to help with their engagement and to help them to see the way in which their individual behaviours ladder up to something much more significant and much more sort of and meaningful and important, and they're part of something which feels as if it's it's got purpose and importance for them. And then then you can see the way in which your small steps can make an impact, but also there is that sounds very grand and noble, but also there's the final, and you use the term final mile bit about, look, there's a whole bunch of reasons why things may not happen, and we see this in lots and lots of different settings we work in. So we need to find ways to actually, at that final mile bit, that's when you want to be making it easy for people, that they can kind of then, yes, I can easily compost this stuff. Yes, I can easily recycle it. Yes, I can easily now make the decision about what whether to buy the refillable package or the regular one, and so on and so forth. So I think those stages are really helpful for us to sort of find ways to support people in terms of, look, how can we disrupt so that we can help people to kind of like pull out of their more regular ways of thinking about something, and then to engage and feel part of something, but also to kind of help them to deliver on that, to enact the behaviour in a straightforward way. I think it's very interesting that when you talk about standing at the grocery store and picking, if you go into the grocery store and you say, I want some shampoo, you're going to walk to the shampoo aisle, pick it up and take it. So your say-do ratio is 100, 1-to-1. You went to buy shampoo, you bought it, you left. But I think the longer between the thing you want to do and the thing you actually do, the longer the distance in both time and complexity, in steps, I think that's where we all fail, is one or two of those steps doesn't happen, and all of a sudden the intention over here is not what actually happens in practice. So, you know, that's really, really telling in terms of behavioural, you know, the way humans behave.
Yeah, and it's you know, look, these things they're tricky, and I think consumers need support in this, because it's very easy to perhaps paint consumers as somehow, you know, we're all consumers, right? You know, paint people as irrational or you know, perhaps sort of, you know, selfish or you know, in quite a few different sort of negative ways. But you know, these are tricky things which we need to sort out. And I don't know, Marguerite, you know, just from your research, you know, you must sort of in looking at consumer behaviour, do you recognise some of these sorts of themes?
I feel like, just like Craig said, it's you have one good idea and you're willing to do something, and even though you may have an eco-conscious mind and have your be full of good ideas, it's one thing to say it and to admit it to everyone, but it's another to actually go all the way to from point A to point Z. And sometimes it's I feel like most people don't actually complete the whole round when it comes to
so then our job is really to understand why and to help them on that journey. And I suppose that this is where we as I feel like as we're entering this period, as we live in this environment, it's becoming clearer to people the importance of this and how it has to take front stage. And I think that, to your point, in a way that sure there is an element of it needs to be facilitated for people. You know, in your example, Craig, to go back to that one, you know, there's so much complexity. There needs to be an element of just trying to make it easy at that end point, so that you don't have to do all that work. But you know, at the very least, you know, and that you know, your intentions were positive, and there was so much you did well and right. And I think that's and you're engaged and thoughtful about it. And so everybody's playing their part here in trying to make this happen.
It was the worst thing in that example is it was 100% effort until the last bit, and then it was 100% failure. Everything I intended to do was completely not done, and that's
great. Well, for those who are listening, we hope that this has given you some insight into the way that we behave and what is all involved when change is wanted, or, you know, in this case, really needed in our everyday lives. Craig and Colin, it was great to hear from both of you, and lots of great topics and actions that were mentioned. Marguerite and I are very pleased to be able to have this chat, so thank you for that. For those listening, this is going to draw to our close our fireside chat today. For those who are interested in wider work that Ipsos do on single-use plastic and behavioral science, please visit ipsos.com to find our white papers. Look for the Sustainability Say-Do gap. Thanks to everyone for listening, and please do join us again in the next fireside chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.